The occupation of the occupied Palestinian territories is, of course, illegal, as countless United Nations resolutions have said. The building of a wall in the West Bank is illegal, as an advisory opinion by the International Criminal Justice has stated. Operation Cast Lead in 2008-2009 was a long string of war crimes, and the settlements are illegal under international humanitarian law. What could possibly explain this defiance of international law for 65 years, getting away with it?
The occupation is illegal. All the Israeli settlements, without a single exception, that are built on occupied land are illegal. The annexation of Jerusalem is illegal. And the Palestinians are engaged in a struggle for national liberation, and it's probably the last anti-colonial struggle in the post-war world. So Israel is an ethnocentric state in a cosmopolitan world society. So it's a reactionary status quo power that opposes change. Now, to come to your question, the most important part of the answer is American support for Israel. In America, Israel is not a foreign policy issue, it's a domestic politics issue. Because of the power of the Israel lobby in America, Israel has tremendous influence over the broad spectrum of American policy towards the Middle East, and not just towards the Palestinian issue. To put it differently, because of America's one-sidedness, because of America's partiality towards Israel, and because America has a veto on the Security Council, the international community has not been able to discipline or to sanction Israel. That's why Israel got away with its latter-day colonialism. Since 1978, America has used the veto on the Security Council 42 times on behalf of Israel. So that's the short answer to why Israel gets away with it.
Israel is de facto a permanent member of the Security Council, you're saying.
Yes. And it wields the power of veto on the Security Council. And there is one extreme example of how Israel de facto wields the American veto on the Security Council, and that was in September 2011. There was a draft resolution before the Security Council condemning Israeli settlement expansion on the West Bank. Not condemning the existing settlements, condemning only settlement expansion and asking Israel to stop expanding settlements. And 14 members of the Security Council voted for, and America defeated it by exercising the veto. Now, American policy since 1967 has said that the settlements are illegal and that they are an obstacle to peace. So why vote against this resolution? So America used the veto to defeat its own policy.
So Israel is in fact putting the US in increasingly embarrassing situations. So this so-called special relationship, is it, do you think, eventually going to drag the US in tougher and tougher positions to defend and more embarrassing situations in the face of the international community?
During the Cold War, Israel was commonly described as a strategic asset for America. I never accepted this description. I thought that Israel was always a liability for America. But since the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, it's pretty clear that Israel is no longer an asset for America, but a liability. You cannot make a rational argument to say that Israel's occupation of the West Bank serves America's interest. It doesn't. General Petraeus, when he was head of Central Command, told Senate that the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories is a major source of hostility towards America worldwide. And he went further and said that Israel's occupation of the West Bank puts the life of American soldiers in Iraq and in Afghanistan in jeopardy. So this is not me, it's an senior American general who says that Israel is a strategic liability for America. And in broader terms, in political terms, because of its blind support for Israel, including the occupation of the West Bank, America alienates the Arab world and antagonizes the Muslim world. So I totally reject the notion that Israel is a strategic asset for America. It's a liability and an embarrassment.
You framed Iraq and, God forbid, Iran as essentially Israeli wars, or rather, as you said, any proposal for a military strike against Israel's enemy can count on the support of Israel's friends in Washington. Iraq in 2003 and Iran today, saber rattling that has been going on for some time. So do you think that ultimately there is this threat of Israel dragging the US in something apocalyptic? I don't want to call it World War III, but that essentially is the label.
Israel is an aggressive and belligerent country that resorts to force too readily. And Israel is therefore a destabilizing force in the entire region. And I wrote a long book, The Iron Wall, Israel and the Arab World, which I'm now updating for a second edition. And it's a history of the Arab-Israeli conflict. The central theme is very simple. The conclusion is that ever since its creation, Israel has been very ready to resort to military force and very reluctant, remarkably reluctant, to engage in meaningful diplomacy to resolve its conflict with the Palestinians. So my summary of Israeli foreign policy since the beginning is too much brute military force and too little diplomacy. And that also goes for Israel's position in relation to Iran. Ever since the Islamic Revolution in 1979 in Iran, Israel has been engaged in demonizing Iran and spreading false misinformation about Iran and exaggerating the extent and scope of the Iranian nuclear program. And Netanyahu's real objective was to induce America to launch a military strike against Iran. Fortunately, he has not succeeded in unleashing America against Iran, but he continued to beat the war drums and to threaten an Israeli military strike against Iran. But all the intelligence and security chiefs are opposed to Israeli military action against Iran. It'd be far too risky. It could have disastrous consequences for the entire region. and for America as well. So despite his best efforts, Netanyahu has failed to provoke America to take military action against Iran, and he doesn't have the support of anyone, any of the leaders of the defense establishment in Israel for taking military action. So he's been stymied, and I don't think there will be World War III.